Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're dialing in from. So thanks for joining us. I'm Heidi Sporrell. For those of you who don't know me, founder of Future Green. We are a small boutique B Corp consultancy working with the food service and food retail sector to help them operate as sustainably as possible. And today we're going to talk about the work we do through the Carbon Literacy Project, a global program helping businesses to get to grips with carbon literacy for their employees and teams. And I wanted to give you a taste of that today before you might decide to get your teams trained up on the link between food and climate change. So let's just summarize who this webinar is for, who we got in the room today. Actually, it'd be really nice if you could put in the chat your name and what country you're dialing in from so we can get a sense of who's here. And I think my team will feed that back to me as we go along. But in the meantime, we are collaborating, just to tell you a bit about today, we're collaborating with Lighthouse Sustainability, a fantastic organization based out of the UK who've delivered carbon literacy for hundreds of businesses, not just in the UK, but also around the world. And we'll be collaborating with them in delivering this project here in Hong Kong, where we are based. And we've already delivered 2 cohorts, so it's been a fantastic experience. We'll share a bit more about that as we go along. So as I said, want to give you a taste of what the program's about, because it's very much targeted to the food sector. So if you work with food and beverage directly or indirectly, this is a great course for you, and you're trying to get upskilled for you and your teams on carbon and climate. And then we'll talk a bit why it's a job for everyone. Every job is a climate job, as we always say, and how we can support you. So just a reminder, why are we here? Why is it important that food businesses do take consideration of climate change and what's going on? But before we get into this, just to be very clear, you're here because you're looking for a solution and you want to understand the pivotal role that businesses play in driving climate change action and how they can contribute to the solution. And you're looking potentially for a credible and recognized certification. And you'll hear that later on, that really Carbon Literacy Project has been around for a good number of years, over 10 years, and delivered training for many different sectors. So very flexible program, and also to over 75,000 citizens globally. So a really well-established, credible program. And you're here because you're eager to take climate action, but you're not sure where to start, especially in the context of your business. So if you're motivated to upskill, then this is the place for you. So let's just talk about what the goal of today is. It's just very much to show you that solutions do exist in terms of what we can do through business. And we really want to show you that, there are solutions that can equip you to take those first steps in carbon literacy. We also, in our training, aim to connect you with the right third parties, because this journey is not one that you can take alone. As you know, some of you who are already doing reporting, when it comes to your Scope 3 reporting, you have to engage your suppliers. And in food, it's typically about 80% of emissions. So critical to engage third parties. And yeah, it's a taster for what's to come if you join the program. So before we sort of get into it too much, I wanted to just share with you a bit more about who we are, in case it's the first time you're connecting with us. So a little bit of history. We set up our organization about 4 years ago as Food Made Good Hong Kong in 2019 as a licensed program of the SRA, the Sustainable Restaurant Association. And really our role was to audit restaurants. But after 3 years, we really outgrew this program. In 2022, we got ourselves B Corp certified. And probably if those of you are already working in sustainability, especially in reporting, you'll know that it's one of the hardest certifications to get. It does take a while as well. So currently there are around 600,000 or 700,000 businesses applying for B Corp status, while there are around 5,000 to 6,000 with that stamp of approval. And really it shows your businesses, your stakeholders, those around you, that actually you can have some stamp of approval for proving that you're purpose-led. So it's about saying, we're a purpose-led business, and we really put purpose and profit side by side as we build and grow our business. And finally, last year in 2023, in January, we rebranded, and today we're working regionally with not just the food service sector, which is where we started out, but also with food retail and also with manufacturers, anyone along the supply chain that really needs to get a grip on food sustainability. We can support you, and we typically do our work now through training and lots of strategy workshops, which can be fun as well. And to give you a sense of how we define what food sustainability is, we have our own framework. Typically, you have environment and society, just like in ESG reporting. And then our third one is procurement. So getting clear on, when we procure food, when we source food, what are those factors that we need to care about? And as you'll see with this carbon literacy program, food and climate, it really intersects with all of these issues here. So we very much take a holistic approach, and you can see along the bottom there as well. If you're familiar, we align with all of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So when we talk about climate and food, we, as I said, like to take a big picture approach, a holistic approach, and we talk about, risk. It's important to get a solid foundation on what we mean by climate and what the risks are if we do nothing. So we give our students sort of a big picture view on things. And here in this infographic, you can see that it's divided into 3 sections. So we dive into these individually, always taking the food business lens. So you can see how broad it is. So when we talk about ecosystems, we really touch on the oceans, habitats and biodiversity. And of course, we source seafood. We know that we need diversity in the foods that we're growing. We need to move away from monocrop systems, for example, for healthy soils. We also talk about, connected to that, social life, equity, peace and migration, and how this can affect the businesses that we're running. On the human level, we talk about agriculture, how water impacts on the food system and health, and then finally transport, buildings and lifestyle. So what we do is connect the dots between all of the different areas, meaning that when we look for solutions and we design interventions, we should always keep in mind the unintended consequences so that we can avoid that siloed approach. And then economic life, there's energy and economy. So by taking this holistic approach, we can really get the big picture view and really do it justice when we're designing our interventions. We also do talk about the science and how we know that the climate is changing. So really important to get to grips with, well, how do we know it? What's the evidence? What's the proof? Because believe it or not, we still have a lot of skeptics out there. So we share that through existing fantastic solid data. And here you can see Dr. Keeling. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of him. So we look at what data is available to provide evidence around climate change. And in terms of history and geography, the idea of climate, the concept of climate science, Dr. Charles Keeling was really one of the first climate scientists to understand the changing of seasonal patterns within our atmosphere and the correlation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So when he was working at Mauna Observatory in Hawaii, he was able to kind of chart these what was going on in terms of seasons. And you can see this black line going up and down and the squiggly red. So the black line shows the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then the squiggly red line shows the seasonal patterns across the variations across the seasons. And so around 1958, he would conduct his studies. And then about the 60s, he was able to deduce that actually the seasons are getting hotter, and essentially carbon dioxide was a heat trapping gas. And so the summers were getting hotter due to the rise in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So this chart is very much widely used around in the climate science space as an example of how we started to understand the issues in the rise of carbon dioxide and how it affect our seasonal patterns. So these are the kind of this kind of data we use in terms of sharing knowledge around how we know that climate change is happening. We also share a lot around what we consider, or well, is considered the most authoritative research in this space. So there's a lot on what's going on. We'll update students on the IPCC. So for those of you who are not aware, this was really, one of the first report in 1988, known as the first assessment report, bringing together scientists globally around the world, put together through United Nations Environment Programme, and really assessing, of all the research out there, what's happening on climate change and pulling it all together. And as I said, 1988 was the first report. But it was only in Glasgow, COP26, 2 years ago in the UK, that was really a key moment for climate, in the sense that where we saw sort of stronger pledges around emissions and the explicit mention of fossil fuels. So it does take time for things to change. And the recent IPCC summary really mentioned quite a few things, that we are on course to reach 1.5, and that every fraction of a degree of warming will lead to more dangerous and costly impacts. And we do need to urgently transition away from fossil fuels. So those are the 6 reports that we have available to us now. So then that's on the global level. We also share, because we're based in Hong Kong, we share what's happening in the region locally and in the region as well. So just recently in Hong Kong, we had some great news that there was going to be a blueprint for food systems transformation, focusing on food security and production. So this is great news, announced in December from the Hong Kong government here. And we'll be following this very closely because it's very much due that we start talking about food systems transformation for Hong Kong. Over 95% of the food here is imported. So we really need to think about food security and all of the rest of the impacts and areas that we just mentioned above as well. So it's a 15-year blueprint, for example, and does have a focus on sustainability goals. It seems that there's a focus on fisheries and also technology, the role of technology, such as using, systems such as hydroponic systems to grow indoor veggies, as an example. So we also share a lot of local and regional case studies, which is important because we want to be inspired to see how businesses are responding. And things are happening here in Hong Kong. An example here was a local, an international school here in Hong Kong recently switched because their stakeholders, their students, their teachers, their staff were asking for more plant-based options. So you can see the values of their audience was changing, and so the school had to do something about it. And as a response, they switched to a more sustainable caterer. We know that in Hong Kong as well, Food Steps, a UK-based carbon labeling organization, has started working with a bank here in Hong Kong, and in their canteen through Compass, they are starting to label food low, medium, high, so that they can communicate with their customers in terms of what's happening with the carbon footprint of food. So again, there's an education option and really driving awareness as well. So there are quite a few organizations that we partner with. This is sort of moving into solutions space, and you can see that Climata is also another fantastic organization that helps the food service space to get their menus carbon labeled. So if that's something new to you, you can check out Climato. So that there are these fantastic services that are sort of crossing borders, and in Hong Kong, businesses are looking for ways to engage their customers in a credible way and give them an edge, actually, because this is very much still quite a progressive space. Another thing that we found that our students really love when we engage organizations, businesses, participants, is to kind of bust those sort of myths that people have around, food and climate, such as this one, that methane from cows is part of a natural cycle. So it's fine to have lots of cows and therefore beef as protein. So I think the critical thing about whenever we do training around carbon literacy or food sustainability is to ensure that we're doing it in an engaging way. So it's all fine to have lots of great, credible content, data science, but it needs to be delivered in a way that's memorable, fun, and engaging. And so we do have these kind of activities that we intersperse all the way through, where we kind of help kind of break down those myths as well. Okay, so were there any questions so far? Please feel free to pop your questions as we go through the webinar, if you're dialing in through YouTube there, or also LinkedIn. I'm just going to take a pause here because I've shared quite a lot of information. I can see we have Australia, UK, Indonesia, Brazil. That's fantastic. Yemen, Kenya. So many great, far and wide. That's what I love about the internet. You can reach people far and wide. We have Hong Kong as well. So yeah, amazing. Great to have so many. Yeah, pop your questions in and I'll try and answer them as we go along. So another thing that we do in our training is to really not just say, okay, here's the data, here's the science, do this. It's helping participants to think critically about the challenges. So for example, we talk about switching to electric vehicles, but if you look at this picture here, what's wrong with it? Can anybody just pop in the chat what's wrong with this picture? So we know that, yes, electric vehicles are better in terms of emissions, right? So that's looking at it from one angle, the environmental perspective. If you compare to traditional sort of fossil fuel cars. But I'd love to hear, looking at this image here, what are the other considerations? I just want to see if anyone is getting this. So I'll give you a minute to have a think about that. I know that we're also sometimes lagging on this stream, so I'll just give you a moment. Anything coming through, Hannah? Someone says, why animal protein? Maybe let's answer this question first and we can pop the other one in. Okay, great. So so no one has the answer to this. Well, when we talk about sustainability, we also talk about the human side, right? It isn't just about climate and environment and greenhouse gas emissions and numbers and scope 1, 2, and 3. It's also about how it in fact impacts on us as humans. So, even if we all switch to electric cars and we don't have a discussion around well-being and health and what are we using our space for, we will still end up in a situation like this, where you see in the image where we have congestion. We are using our space just to quickly, move people around individually. So this congestion doesn't help us when we're trying to think about well-being and spending time outdoors and what is the best use of our space, green space, for example. So what we try to do in our training is to really help you think critically from lots of different perspectives, not just the environmental perspective, but how, our lifestyles, what are we doing in terms of our lifestyles to support and protect a healthy lifestyle. Okay, so I've got a question here. So someone's asking about the PowerPoint. yeah, definitely. This is going to be recorded, so you're welcome to watch it back. And at the end, we'll share where you can have access to this as well. And then animal protein and substitutes. Yeah, absolutely. So in our training, we talk about lifestyle, and the food that we choose to eat is something that we can all do something about in terms of choices. The food that we choose really has an impact on emissions, on animal welfare, and all of these things in terms of how we can have a positive impact. So we do talk about the protein story as well. Right, so I'm going to keep going here. And yeah, as I said, just keep popping your questions in. So another thing that we do, we're not going to do this now, but what's important to know, as I said, when we do training, it's so important to engage your audience. So last week, for example, we were delivering training to food retailers, so supermarkets. We were delivering training to an NGO, to a social enterprise, to food manufacturers, to hospitality. And this was an open course. So what we did in that case is we allowed our students to vote on the case studies that they wanted to hear. And this interactivity really enables engagement. So here's just an example of some stories that we could share around what these businesses were doing in terms of reporting on their, the actions they're taking around climate change, but really digging deep into what's going on in terms of the reporting and their actions, understanding the supply chain, really digging into, for example, when Unilever says they're working with their farmers and shifting them to regenerative practices. So looking deep into those case studies and sharing those as best practice, so that we can inspire businesses to do things differently. So yeah, we had retailers on, and these are local but also international case studies. So we have businesses here in Hong Kong, in Australia, in Singapore, and then the food service, where we find examples. We find them locally, but also internationally as well. And then finally, the suppliers as well. So it really doesn't matter which part of the food supply chain you work in, there's always great stories to tell. And I think it's important to talk about those case studies and success stories, because especially here in Hong Kong and in Asia, we are, I feel, a little bit behind the rest of the world, especially Europe or the UK, in taking action. And often these big international groups are, the global strategy is there, and they're trying to localize the strategies, but the challenges are not really acknowledged. So, for example, with Compass Group, we were able to guide them on, okay, this is what global is doing. Well, how do we then localize this global sustainability strategy and make it work for Hong Kong and the region? And that's really important, to just be very honest about what's possible and what's not. Quite often, especially here in Hong Kong, we talk about the structural challenges we have in implementing change. So recycling, for example, really isn't, something that is well established here. Hopefully that's changing, but you can't just, pick up a global sustainability strategy and start to put those those initiatives in place. You have to localize it, and that's something that we love to support businesses on. Okay, so just looking at the chat now for some questions. We create more e-waste with all private cars, and there's no public transport. Yeah, so that was back about that question on, so what if we switch to electric vehicles? We still have a ton of e-waste. Yeah, so the answer to that is to have a good public transport system, an affordable transport system, and accessible to all. And I do think in Hong Kong we have an amazing system, MTR system, so that allows everyone to travel at a low cost. All right, so let's move on. So another thing we love to do is kind of simplify all the chatter around sustainability and, all the data and the science. So we like to use memes and whatever way we can to help bring, a very dry subject can be very dry and very technical. We try to bring it down to, something that is easy and accessible and memorable. So I love this meme that I found online. And I think when you're trying to train people on what can be quite technical, we're always there trying to simplify and clarify and synthesize. So this was one that we shared recently when we talked about the challenges around the different scopes in reporting. And it's just very memorable because, well, it's Leonardo DiCaprio, but the idea is that, yes, scope 3 is very, very challenging. The majority of those emissions are from scope 3. Working with your third-party suppliers is critical in order to start addressing those emissions from your scope 3. Okay, so now I'm just going to get into a few of, so the solutions that we talk about are around what businesses can do. And we also define very clearly what we mean by scope 1, 2, and 3, making it very clear that this is the greenhouse gas protocol. So we talk through all of that. Even though we don't do reporting ourselves at Future Green, our partners do that. It's just important that everybody in your organization gets a sort of a foundational understanding of what carbon literacy is. So we do touch upon this and just explain it in context, really, that this is best practice currently. And so we also help you to run your own carbon footprint, get you to measure and create that awareness around the fact that every individual has a carbon footprint. And then we talk through how we can reduce and the different ways we can. So whether that's through lifestyle or whether that's through doing something in our place of work. We also, of course, our area of expertise is the food system. So we look at the whole training through the lens of food businesses. And it's critical that food businesses are not just looking at siloed approaches. And the example I always give is, if you were only procuring your seafood based on greenhouse gas emission numbers, you would really be doing a disservice for sustainability, because, as we know, seafood is grown in the wild. And today we have 90% of our fisheries are at risk because we are overfishing. So that's an issue around biodiversity and risk of extinction. So, looking at the different impacts together is really important. So looking at emissions, looking at the risk of extinction, and other factors as well, because we know that 80% of our emissions from our food system are from the farm level. So we're bringing in this holistic approach to the training, and so that we are much more aware of the big picture rather than taking that siloed approach. What we also love to do is to keep this very human-centered, using our design thinking tools, bringing in behavior change as well as a way, as a tactic to give examples. You can use behavior change in order to help your business make changes without it being costly. So lots of fantastic examples using behavior change as a tactic. Also, this idea of values, what our values are, and addressing and acknowledging that values play a big role, whether we make changes, and also mindsets. So we do look at the iceberg model as well, a little bit of systems thinking there. And collectively, we try to design initiatives through our case studies, through inspiration from our case studies as well. And another thing that we love to share is our Planorama, because the Planorama is a fun design thinking approach. And this is very much part of the AJ and Smart workshopping group, a workshop style. It's very popular, and every time we run it, we always get really good feedback. So it's not just about, again, dumping a load of data on participants. It's like, okay, how do we actually design an initiative in a democratic way, in a fun way, and in a team-aligned way? And this is something we do through Miro, our online app software, which works anywhere in the world. So a great thing about this in line with carbon literacy thinking is that you can run a lot of these workshops online quite comfortably. So just to summarize the training flow, we talk about the risks, what happens if we do not act, and how do we know the climate is changing. So looking at the data and the science, we're busting those myths as well, trying to help businesses to really get, and individuals to get to grips with the beliefs out there and really putting the science behind it. We also like to keep it highly structured and engaging, and you'll see from our testimonials later on that is so important because people have limited time, so you want to be very careful in terms of how you deliver these workshops. So our workshops are very, very structured. And then the fun part, because it's not all doom and gloom, we do spend a whole day, a whole afternoon, so one half almost, on the solutions and really driving home those practical ways to reduce carbon footprint at home and work. And our delivery tool is that collaborative alignment workshop or Planorama. So that's thanks to AJ and Smart. Really great. If you don't know them already, I suggest you Google them. Really fantastic design thinking tools. So I hope that's kind of giving you a sense of how we would bring carbon literacy training. And if you're still excited and interested about this, I'll just share a few more facts around this program, which we think is just fantastic because it really has been around for over 10 years and really going strong with hundreds of trainers around the world, and a fantastic program which has not just helped train trainers from all over the world. Once you go through this program, you do get a certificate from them as well, which we will help administer. And as long as you make your pledge, you do get certified. So another good thing about this is that you can have something to show on your LinkedIn profile and your CV as well. Okay, I'm going to jump in to see if I've got any more questions before I move forward. So are you implying that food businesses can mitigate or decarbonize, and other businesses as well? Are you just looking at decarbonizing own businesses? So absolutely, that's what the whole green, the greenhouse gas protocol is about. It's all about removing emissions from our own, what's in our control. So when you talk about sustainability in general, you're talking about what's in your control, what's not in your control. And generally, scope 1 and 2 are the things that are more in your control. And so businesses will address those first because it's much easier to do that. So they'll take action around those, reducing and removing emissions from their activities. So it could be the buildings, switching to green energy, the cars that they're using to deliver, the trucks they're using to deliver their food in. And then the scope 3, that's what's not in your control. And that's where you influence other businesses so that, you can help to decarbonize that way. So it's absolutely about partnerships. It's absolutely about working with other businesses. So that's a really good question that, sooner or later, you will have to work with your suppliers, and engaging them is critical. Having that strong relationship, building that trust so that you can start working together to, own that risk and collectively move that forward together. Okay, so somebody's asking, carbon literacy must be mandatory, not just in corporates, but right from schooling and even colleges, making it mandatory for people irrespective of their subject. I absolutely agree. And we are very much about trying to help this get into schools. Businesses should have it as part of their onboarding. And actually, we do know some businesses in the UK that we are connected to ensure that as soon as, let's say, a graduate joins their business, they will run them through this program as part of their onboarding. So that's coming into jobs, but I totally agree that this should be part of the curriculum, even at a young age. I do think that the younger generation are much more aware, the youth movement are much more aware than, let's say, our generation. Okay, so let me share a little bit about the Carbon Literacy Project, because I do think it's important to get a sense of this program, why it works, why we're excited about it, and it's really something that we're very proud of delivering in Hong Kong, because we're the first organization in Hong Kong, and I do believe in the region, to deliver this program. So it started in the UK and still is there as its head office in Manchester, born in 2012 as a non-profit program. And today, as I said earlier, it's been delivered to over 70,000 individuals and 5,000 organizations. And some of these organizations are competing to be carbon literate organizations. So what do I mean by that? A certain percentage of your business, if you can get your employees certified, then you can start getting that label of carbon literate organization, and it goes from bronze and silver to gold. So it's a really nice way for businesses to identify as a business that cares about climate change, taking action, and educating their teams on this. It's also been delivered in 25 nations, so very, very global and very relevant. The program is very adaptable. You can adapt it to any industry. I've delivered and supported delivery to the art sector, and of course, most recently to our food service and food businesses here in Hong Kong. So it's very much about scaling sustainability knowledge as well. What we love about it is that it's a global program and there's plenty of support as well. What we typically do and love about the program, it's very much about peer learning. So once you take the course, you end up you have resources to continue your journey. It's very much, they do encourage this, that it's not just taking a program and then stop. You have lots of very actionable initiatives, actionable sort of direction for taking action, let's say, and a portal as well to get lots and lots of resources. And I like this line the Carbon Literacy Project uses, because it's just very clear that it is a program set up to give everyone everywhere training. So it doesn't matter if you're a law firm or if you're a supermarket, everybody from all levels, from leadership all the way down to those stacking shelves, everybody should have basic grounding in climate knowledge. Another thing, so this is the certificate that you would receive, and there's an average that the organization has come up with. It's about 5 to 15% of carbon savings once individuals make their pledges, their workplace pledge and their individual pledge. So if you do take a carbon literacy project training, whether that's with us or any other organization, there is this kind of commitment that you put in your pledge, and with that pledge you will make some savings. So you might be wondering, well, what kind of organizations? So this is a huge range. You can see it's really not defined by industry. Any industry can take the Carbon Literacy Project training, whether you're in TV, whether you sell jackets, you're Patagonia, electronics, because the idea is that it's important that we all have a grounding in carbon literacy training. And in terms of food businesses here in the region, it doesn't matter if you're a caterer, you're a supermarket, or a quick service, we've trained reps in these businesses. We got some really fantastic testimonials as well from our students, and it really goes to show that people are so surprised about their carbon footprint. It's you can be a student, you can be a senior manager. We get so many comments around, I had no idea how big my carbon footprint was. So once that awareness is there, people start to take action, and it's all about small steps. Okay, So yeah, a little bit about us. We have, in Hong Kong, especially, and in the region, we have, it's now about 2,000. We have about 2,000 in our network of like-minded individuals that we're sharing stories around sustainability with on a monthly basis. We can certify our courses, so it's really great because I think individuals want to get that recognition. We've worked with global drinks brands as well. We also deliver in different languages, and Cantonese and Mandarin is also available too. All right, so these are just some pictures. And I think we do encourage, because as you'll learn if you take the course, that the difference between going in person for courses and then doing them virtually is huge in terms of your carbon emissions. So we do encourage having your courses delivered virtually as well. Here's some more pictures of us delivering our training, and one of these was actually on a farm. And if you don't know what the climate stripes are, you can see them here. I encourage you to Google it right now. It's a really fantastic way, symbolically, just quick visual that is memorable, and to remind people that our climate is changing. So check out the climate stripes, and we've got our previous students to put that on their background. Okay, so if you're interested in learning more about our course, take a course, gift it for Chinese New Year. We do encourage gifts that are about experiences and not material goods. So do let us know if you are interested in learning more about carbon literacy. If you're a company, we can design bespoke courses for you at any time. But if you're an individual looking to take an open course, our next course is on Tuesday, the 23rd of April, and that would run 2 half days. So typically it would be in the afternoon in Hong Kong, in our Hong Kong time zone, and they run about 3.5 hours each for 2 afternoons. We are looking at expanding that to make it either a bit longer or an extra course, because some of the feedback has come back that they'd like to do to have more time. So there's a lot of content to share. So yeah, that's there for you. And Hannah will pop the link in the chat in case you don't have your phone ready. And I do encourage you to check it out, think about how this can have a positive impact, not just individually, but also for your workplace. And we also wanted to share a couple of freebies here. If you're working in operations, we encourage you to take the self sort of scorecard. It's free. You can understand a little bit more about sustainable procurement. And then obviously connected to that is the climate impact. But this one is great if you're in operations and you just want to know, well, what is sustainable food? How is it linked to climate change? You can take this free assessment. It'll take you about, I think, less than 10 minutes. You can sit with your chef, your procurement manager, and just run this, and you'll get a sense from that what the issues are around food sustainability. So we'll also pop that link in the chat. And then the other one is we've just newly created this as a different visual. So it'd be great for those of you who do fill it out for us to get some feedback. It's our 2-page food vision plan. And again, we encourage you to download it, make a copy, go for coffee with your colleagues, and just sit down and work through this 2-page plan. It's based on our framework, very holistic, and it's a really great way for you to put in just 2 pages all the initiatives that you're running in sustainability. And once you have that, it's much easier to sort of understand where the gaps are in terms of taking a holistic approach. And of course, climate cuts across all of these 15 areas of our framework. So that's another thing that you can do in terms of immediately taking action. And we also encourage you, if you have filled it out, connect with us for a discovery call, and we can talk you through it in terms of some quick wins and what you can do for change. So that's based on our framework. And one final sort of, I love this phrase from Christo, entrepreneur. He says, learning is good, but doing is better. And we're all about doing, we're all about taking action. So if you feel inspired today, really encourage you to do something and start small. The issues are very can be overwhelming, but they're addressable. So encourage you to take action either way. Okay, so another thing you can do is actually check out our previous webinars. This is the 4th in a series of 4, so it's our final one that we've been running over the last 7 months, and we'll be sharing a link so you can watch those back if in case you've missed them. They vary. Some of them, one is around food visioning, which is how we talk about food strategy, so a bit more sort of high level. We also then get very practical on the other two. They're more like a 101, what is food sustainability and what are some of the solutions in terms of acting and switching things up and making change in my organization. So those are there for you, available as well. Check it out in the chat link. And I'd love to hear if you have any more questions. I think I've answered the current ones so far. So I'll wait for your questions to come through. And in the meantime, please do sign up for our newsletter. Every 2 weeks, we're sharing great stories on what organizations are doing to transition to a more sustainable food system. And we send that out on Friday mornings here in Hong Kong. And it's absolutely free as well. All right. Do we have any more questions, Hannah? Nothing else? Yeah. So thanks for joining us. This has been great. And I love seeing that we had participants from all over the world, from UK all the way to Australia and all the countries in between. It's really great to be able to reach such a large audience. And hopefully we'll hear from you taking action on climate and food. And yeah, stay connected, check out the webinars, and definitely follow us on LinkedIn, where we're very active. Oh, okay, one question. So I have a question here for food processing. So yeah, there's absolutely lots of best practices around food processing. And maybe you can be more specific with what kind of food. Are you tinning food? Is it oils you're working with? So if you're working in food processing, I encourage you to consider our food sustainability CPD course. That's more about on the operational side and would be more useful compared to this carbon literacy project course. And I think Hannah can also share the link to get more information about that. And then we have a comment, would love to join the trainer team. Yeah, we're not actually delivering a train the trainer program at the moment, but we do have peers in our network that do deliver train the trainer. I do encourage you to look that up if you would like to get involved in becoming a trainer. Sorry, say that again. SME food store chains. Oh yeah, so if you're in food retail, there's absolutely a ton of things that you can be doing, and loads of case studies around small businesses selling food. So if you look at our framework, you can be looking to do any of those things, but the challenge is just identifying what you want to do first, next, and then later. So if you are a retailer, one thing you might want to look at is your machinery, your refrigerators, because they have a lot of high impact in terms of emissions, and the kind of food choices that you're choosing to sell to customers. Are they considered sustainable brands? Have you considered, putting a focus on B Corps? Or if it's seafood, MSC, ASC labeled. If it's coffee, fair trade, Forest Alliance. There's so many standards around for food that you can look into. So there's the procurement of the food itself, but you can also look at the energy on the environmental side. And then there's the society pillar, which is about nutritious food, for example, and how you train your teams, your staff, and upskilling them as well. So look at it through three sort of pillars: environment, society, and then the procurement. I think procurement would be the big one. If you want to have the biggest impact, that's really where we like to start first with food retail or food businesses anyway. I hope that helps. Okay, so anything else? Harry, thanks. I'll think about enrolling. Oh, that's great. Hi, Harry. Harry's from the circular economy community. I know, is it circular economy? Yeah, circular economy community in Hong Kong. It's good to have some familiar people, even though I can't see your faces. I'm sure there's some friends in the room here. So yeah, thanks for joining the webinar. Great. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to give you your 10 minutes back from today. Oh, we have one more question. Okay, just wait for that to come through. How about from the operations perspective? Yeah, so that will be well, you can still look at it through the environmental pillar, through the society pillar, and the procurement pillar. So the obvious ones are energy and waste, right? So starting to monitor and measure those, you can immediately save money. So one organization who deals with food waste management and uses AI, uses machines, they told us that the savings are typically between 6 and 8% once you start monitoring and measuring waste and understanding what kind of waste is going through the operations. Because we will be, especially in Hong Kong, there's a waste charge coming in, right? So that's kind of an obvious one. If you're not monitoring your waste already, you should really be doing that. Once we start charging for bags, we're hoping that businesses will make more of an effort to reduce that waste coming in the first place. So that could be packaging, or packaging that comes in with the product, and having to dispose of that. How to work in food sustainability as a consultant. Do you have a course for that? That's a really good question, because when I first got into food sustainability about 10 years ago, there was no work in this space. It's very niche. It's definitely a very progressive space to be in. And yeah, it's definitely something that I feel will grow. If you were following COP28, you'll have seen that the Declaration on Food and Agriculture, that was signed by 134 signatories, at least, countries. So it's going to be a growing space. I do feel like it'll be a fantastic space to get into. So for me, I took a master's in food policy in the UK at the Centre for Food Policy, and that's where my interest started in this. But it's not an easy journey. It's very, very much a daily uphill battle to get people to talk about food system sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, businesses like to do energy transition or buildings transition, because the food space is the elephant in the room. When you're trying to change human behavior, it's actually very tricky. So it's not a popular one with businesses, but we know that we have to address it. And now with COP28, we got food established as an impact industry, an industry that we have to address. So that's very exciting. So you can absolutely work in food sustainability, and I encourage it, because we need more food sustainability consultants. We do train the trainer for our food sustainability foundations course. So just get in touch and connect with us for a discovery call. I can share more about that. But it's a growing space, I would say. It's not like, going out there and being a doctor or an accountant. It's definitely a moving space. Super. All right, I think that was the last question. Yeah, great. Okay, so thanks for joining us. I really hope you'll stay connected, and yeah, don't be a stranger. Follow us on LinkedIn, and definitely read our newsletter. Lots of great stuff we share every 2 weeks. All right, I'm going to give you a time back. Thanks, guys.